And just like that, this is another episode. You are currently in perspective, and it's been well over 6 months. I think way over 6 months since I've last done a video where I sit down, talk about what is going on and what I am doing as a photographer. And it's already the end of 2021. Only a couple more days left. It's currently the 25th. And I do recall me doing a video like this this January. So theoretically it was for 2020, but I'm doing this one a little bit earlier. So 2021, as a teen photographer, from starting out the year 17 to turning 18 and becoming an adult and all that fun stuff, I've kind of taken it a little bit slower this year in regards to creative projects that I've done on my own. This year as a photographer, I've grown as a business rather than as a photographer itself. I've talked about this many times, whether that be through the In Perspective podcast or just...
How long?
What? I've been kind of telling people that I feel like I've been growing as a business rather than as a photographer, and I've kind of wanted to kind of boil down everything that I've done as a photographer this year and try and kind of keep the whole business side of it out of this video because that's not interesting. I find the more creative projects that I've done by myself or collabing with others, I find those to be much more rewarding than, doing a portrait shoot for someone for, money. So 2021 has been a very strange year all around. I honestly sometimes get it confused with 2020 because I don't know what I've done this year and what I haven't done this year, and I kind of look back and I'm like, oh, I did that this year? I thought that was last year. Or I'll do something that was last year and I would think it was this year. So with that being said, let's just start with the first thing that I kind of really brought up this year, which was the In Perspective podcast, which I haven't been doing a lot lately, and I've been actually planning on doing something like that again sometime soon, or I'm going to continue In Perspective sometime soon with someone I've been talking to. He's a creative writer, and we have all these ideas and we really bounce off of each other. So there's going to be a new episode for In Perspective, but that In Perspective idea came out of nowhere after watching some like North Border stuff, and I knew they had a podcast. I was like, I'm going to sit down. I've brought a couple people on board in the podcast. I've talked to my friend Devin, who I did Michael the Stapler with. I've talked to my friend Hannah, who I used to work with, because she was also trying to do photography stuff. I don't even know. I've kind of spiraled that into this own like project or whatever, and I'm trying to bring that back. It's just a matter of figuring out what to talk about and also just trying to figure out the best way to talk about it. But I definitely have a podcast episode coming out soon. It might actually be in video form, so that'll be interesting. So 2022 is going to be interesting to see if In Perspective will take off or if I'll continue it. We'll see. But that kind of really broadened, kind of grew my idea of what I could do as a creative rather than just taking pictures. I can tell stories through the podcast. I can talk to other people, other creatives about, photography, writing, any sort of artistic realm that it may be in. That's kind of what In Perspective is for. It's to put yourself in someone else's shoes, to talk about what it is, so you can kind of have perspective on what it is that us creatives, do, and the struggles that we have within that community or within that, So In Perspective is going to come back, definitely. I just got to figure out what I want to talk about. With the introduction of In Perspective, that was kind of the very beginning of 2021, if not, may have started in 2020, actually. I look back, it said 11 months ago, so I'm going to assume it was 2021. It just feels like I started it back last November rather than this year. So anyway, that kind of took on its own entity, its own thing. And then I kind of slowly grew into car photography. And if you knew anything about me, the beginning of 2021 and the end of 2020, I was really into taking photos of cars and going out to dealerships and taking photos for them and finding people who had cool cars and taking pictures for them. That's obviously kind of died down. I don't do nearly as many car shoots. I just kind of lost the interest for it, at least for right now, because that was the most common type of photography I was doing, so that got really repetitive after a while. But I will mention doing the Cars and Coffee videos and photos that really kind of built my portfolio.
Too thick with the stick that I won't miss. Little sick, real sick, don't talk shit. Whip like a brick, scallop fish. Suicide nighttime, no, we don't fight crime, oh. It's a great fight now with the real red eyes and we dying inside, oh.
And the videos, I've done a few videos for some car meets and they came out really good. So while yes, doing the car photography stuff may not have really helped me grow as a photographer, it really helped me understand the different types of photography. I was so into weddings and portraits and landscape that I didn't know about car photography and how it's its own art. If you watch anything like North Borders, you would understand that car photography, it takes a lot more than just put a car in the middle of the road and take a picture of it, you know. So with that being said, 2021 was mainly focused on the car photography scene. Taking a lot of photos of the Veloster N when I had that. It's a long story. We're not going to go into it in this video, but I did have the Veloster N for a while, and then that I kind of grew out of that, and I realized car photography, there's not really a market for it to an extent. You're not going to have people constantly asking for photos of their car like they would a family. So towards the end of November, I kind of reached out of car photography and kind of wanted to go back to portraits, which I find to be enjoyable again because I haven't done it for so long. And car photography is kind of what grew me in 2021. That's like the main focus I did all year. So as for 2022, it's going to be kind of interesting to see where that takes off and whether I continue doing car photography. I'm sure I will, considering I do work at a car dealership. But it's also going to be interesting to see what other types of photography I'm going to be doing, whether I do more car photography, more portraits, which is what I want to do, or, what I also want to do, which I'll talk about in a minute, which is travel photography. Speaking of car things, let's just talk about the RE film that happened back in April. Me and Peyton, my friend at the time, we took the Kia Soul, and if you knew anything about me in 2020 or watched any of my videos, the Kia Soul was kind of who I was. It was featured in the Andre 2000 video.
I got $2,000.
It was featured in my Walmart Disc video. It was featured in a lot of other videos too. And we were planning on taking it out to Luray, or to Skyline Drive, and get some cool cinematic shots because I got a drone, I got a GoPro, so I thought, hey, I could get some cool footage. Turns out that was not the case. The car wanted to break down, give me it had rod knock.
Context. Yeah, I don't think it's running right. Thoughts? Damn.
I try to hold it in the night while you're sleeping next to me, but it's your arms that I need this time. Look at the cars that we've been down. If you were anybody else, probably wouldn't last a day. Every tear's a rain parade from hell.
While in the process of trying to create this film, the Kia broke down. Ain't that right?
Oh no. I don't think this film's coming out anytime soon. Scrapped that idea, turned it into a memorial video. I sat down before I started this video to look at that, and I was kind of looking back on it, and I was like, I feel like I haven't done much as a videographer, as a director, as in creative this year. And then I looked back, and I did the Ari's film, and while it may not be, top tier cinematography, it still told an interesting story, in my opinion. It still had some creative shots. I learned some editing techniques that I wouldn't have learned without that video. So basically what I'm trying to say is, while you don't need to have a big video idea and this big extravagance of footage to make it interesting. As long as you tell a story and you learn something while you make that video, I think that's the most important part about whether it be photos or video. It may not be your best work, but maybe you did something in that kind of helped you grow and learn as a creative that you wouldn't have learned hadn't you done that project. Sure, the project may not be, up to your standards. You can't give yourself too much negativity to think, oh, I didn't do anything this year because, you know, I didn't have like a 2-hour long documentary or a 2-hour long film. It should be more, what did I put out this year that I took something away with, that I learned something from, that I grew from? It doesn't have to be this extravagant, you know, parade of groundbreaking cinematics and you don't have to have crazy editing to make a video interesting. As long as you're learning stuff from it and you're growing and you're expanding your knowledge in that ground of whatever it may be, whether that be photo, video, anything, I feel like that's more important than putting out a 2-hour film, you know. And that's what I'm kind of thinking back on as 2021 rolls out the window. It's like I did do one project that was very substantial, and I'm going to talk about that next. But I also noticed I've done a lot of shorter, smaller projects that to my eyes don't seem like this big extravagant like thing to just put out for people to see. It's more smaller bits that I grew off of. Like I have a few videos of me just messing around with the drone. The 1-minute video. That was a very, you know, got some shots, edited it, and, you know, tried to make it interesting. And while that wasn't a big project like Michael the Stapler or Impressed, the short film I made last year, it should still have the recognition in my eyes that those videos, those films had. They may not impress as many people and may not be as, like, it may not give me as much credit as, you know, Michael the Stapler or the Impressed film, but it's still something to take with me and to show other people that, hey, I did this. I went out of my comfort zone, tried something new, and it may not be the best, but it's still something to grow off of. And I think that's what's really important when you look back on anything you did throughout the year, whether it be through photos, video, whatever it may be. You don't have to have these like big extravagant projects. You can just have these smaller, more low-key sort of videos that aren't 30 minutes long. It could be like 5 minutes long, but it's enough to where you're going to try and at least consistently put out these 5-minute videos, which hypocritically I cannot say because I did not upload much this year. But I think it's more crucial to put out, especially when you're learning the craft, especially videography, which is what I'm trying to get more into, cinema stuff. You don't have to put out 2-hour long videos every time you want to show off something. Kind of have an epiphany. That's kind of a good point. You don't have, I mean, I've said this the whole time, you don't have to have these big projects. You just have to have these smaller things that kind of contribute to your knowledge and kind of help you grow as a creative. And doing these smaller things, I feel like would just help you grow much more substantially than doing, you know, 2 or 3 like bigger projects. Does that make sense? I don't know. I will say this. The one big project that I completely overlook sometimes is the I don't want to do this anymore documentary with electrical interference.
Hey, don't find me, this is just my like relaxation spot. I don't know if this is an autistic kid thing or a fat kid thing.
Which has some of my best friends in it. My friend Aiden, my friend Jacob, and my friend Darren are in a band, and I did some photos for them, and then we just kind of hit it off. I already knew them before, but I never actually hung out with them. And then we just turned this idea of a joke idea of mine to be like, hey, let's make a documentary of you guys having your first show. And then it kind of turned into this bigger thing. We got some friends and family to watch it, and it kind of turned into this like, holy crap, this is actually happening. And next thing you knew, we were having a trailer for it. We had a premiere for it, and it's probably one of my bigger projects of 2021. My camera kind of cut off, so I don't know where it cut me off, but hopefully editing Tyler will try and make that cutoff seem as seamless as possible. The electrical interference, I don't want to do this anymore documentary. I don't think it's my best work. At the time, I thought it was my best work. And looking back on it, you know, it was very impressive for what I wanted to do at the time. And I think it's still impressive, but in the long run, yeah, I could have done some things better. Could have made the story flow a little bit better. Could have organized the interviews a little bit better. But that was literally the first time I've ever done a documentary. Doing stuff like that every once in a while, doing something that's completely out of your comfort zone, some completely new to what you're used to, it can really bring upon challenges that you never thought existed. And those challenges, once you overcome them, which you will, because you have to overcome almost any challenge in order to succeed in life. In my opinion, that documentary was kind of a game changer for me. It kind of opened my horizons to what I can do as a storyteller, as a videographer, as a director, as an editor, all these different things. It's still all a learning process. You got to remember that. No matter how long you've been doing your craft, whether that be for 5 years, 10 years, 2 years, 20 years, 30 years, you're constantly learning, you're constantly growing, you're going to constantly make mistakes, you're going to constantly think, this sucks. Because at the end of the day, you are your worst critic, and I've said that in the Impress video. You are your worst critic, and I think that stands true to everything you do. Like, I'm sure there are many big name people out there, big name directors, big name, cinematographers who are really up there in their industry. I can guarantee you they probably look back on their old work and think, there's probably stuff they could do better, stuff they wish they changed, and they didn't because in that moment they thought it was good. And I think that's a lot of what my work is. In that moment, it looks good, it seems good, and it is good, but to an extent. You're going to look back on your stuff and be like, oh, I could have done this better, I could have done that better. You're never going to have that perfect creative project. So with that being said, I think the electrical interference video was a very big breakthrough as a creative for me. It was towards the middle of the year, so, you kind of forget about it as time goes on. But I think that was definitely one of the most important pieces of work that I've done in a very long time that kind of defined who I am as a creative. So with that being said, I said I didn't really want to talk about the business stuff and talk more about the photography, video stuff as a creative rather than as a business, but I will point out 2020, I used to be called Tylrr Photographer, whatever. That's what I thought I was going to name my business whenever I turned 18. And then I kind of just turned it into Tylrr Media. And then, you have to do all the tax stuff, all the government stuff, which is not fun, but, you kind of have to. I kind of turned Tylrr Photographer into Tylrr Media, which kind of has grown into its own entity. Thank goodness it kind of took on a name of its own and kind of, stuck. Tylrr Media is, the idea of it was going to be Tylrr Photographer. Then I've been talking about this whole video, I want to focus a lot on video too. So let's say I do a wedding and they want video. I can't be considered Tylrr Photographer if 10 years down the line, I'm doing video a lot. It just made more sense to me to call it Tylrr Media. And to be quite frank, that's simply it. It still has my name in it without the E. It's just RR, which a lot of people get so confused about. But I think it still portrays who I am as a creative. Tylrr Photographer, Tylrr Media. There's no big difference. It's just a matter of, I was thinking of down the line, if I want to do more video stuff, Tylrr Media would make more sense than Tylrr Photographer. So that's the whole idea of it. But that's also been a big thing in 2021, is turning my photography into an actual business. And that's been a very difficult and stressful part of 2021. But 2022, you're just going to keep learning on it. You're going to grow more comfortable with it. You're going to start to understand how to run a business, how to do all this. And, it'll get easier as time goes on. But 2021 has been a very stressful year. And I think that's one of my bigger excuses, is I've been so focused on growing as a business that I haven't been focused on the smaller things, like the projects, the in perspective, the films, the videos. the photos for that matter. I've just been so focused on how do I get more clients. So last thing, I'm sure I'm missing a lot of things. I tried my best to keep this somewhat short, but the Boston trip. I'm not even going to go into detail because I have a whole video, somewhat of a whole video, of me and my friend Aiden going out there and trying to document it, even though I kind of fell short. You know, I kind of explained in that video, I did it for self-care. I wanted to go out, explore. That's because that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to go out and take pictures, and I got one of my most favorite pictures out of that trip. And that whole Boston trip, it's a very good conversation starter now, to me at least. Because one of my most favorite photos came out of it, and I can have a good story to tell, you know. It was like 11:30, and we were just out hanging about, and took out my drone, saw this good opportunity, and, you know, I got a cool shot. And I think that's a good conversation starter, is be like, hey, I went to Boston, got this cool photo, blah, blah, blah. You know, and if I didn't go to Boston, I feel like this whole year would have been completely different. It would have had a totally different outcome. I probably would have felt even more unproductive, more useless in this year than I have been last year. Because that's what I'm comparing myself to right now, is 2021 as a photographer compared to 2020 as a photographer, where I feel like I got way more done. And while my work back then may not be as good as it is now, it's kind of a weird thing to say, because I don't know if my stuff's gotten better per se, but I feel like I've done less this year, but it's been more quality compared to last year, where it was more quantity over quality, you know. I think this year has been a more reasonable mix of, if I put something out, it, you know, has a purpose, has more of a meaning to it. The R32 Skyline video, okay, I take that back. That was actually kind of just a one and done video. It wasn't really creative. But the electrical interference video, the in perspective, the 1 minute drone video, the Boston video, like, I feel like those are more quality videos to an extent. I know they're not good, but compared to last year where I was doing random boring things that I would just put out because, you know, I recorded something cool with my camera and tried to turn it into something that it wasn't. I think that kind of has this weird line between last year where it was quantity over quality, and then this year where I feel like I've been trying to lean more into quality over quantity. And that's where I'm trying to focus 2022 on, is mixing that. As dumb and as basic and as obvious as that sounds, I need to focus myself on quality and quantity. I have some ideas for this year. So 2022 is not necessarily going to be a better year. I can guarantee that. I think it's just going to be more or less kind of like this year, except I want to grow the business more. But I also want to do more stuff video-wise, more creative stuff that I enjoy. And that's what I need to start doing. I need to start learning. I need to start sitting down, you know, thinking of ideas, thinking of projects, actually executing them, rather than being like, I'm tired. You know, that's a silly excuse. You know, I'm tired right now, but I'm doing a video. And I think that's what's important. Once you get in that rhythm, you know, things are going to get easier. Things are going to get more productive. Things are going to be a little smoother. They're going to be a lot easier to manage. You know, I didn't want to sit here and set down a tripod. Not because I didn't want to make a video, but because I was like, oh, what if the video's boring? What if I have nothing to talk about? That's the issue. That's the mindset that you need to get out of. And that's the mindset that I'm constantly in, is like, it's just going to be bad. It's just going to not turn out well. And that may be true. This video might be terrible, you know, but it's something. And I think that's been the struggle of 2021. That's why I've just been so, you know, inconsistent with what I do compared to last year where I was, you know, making videos pretty often. This year it's just been a lot slower. And I'll blatantly admit, you know, it's true. You know, it's difficult. But like I said, if I can get myself back up there and constantly putting myself out there, it's going to get easier. 2022, if I can make more videos, that's all I want to do. Make more videos, make stuff that, you know, people can watch and be like, wow, that was actually pretty interesting. That's all 2022 needs to be for me. Alright, I'm just going to assume we're still recording. Had a phone call. But to end this video, just because I want to wrap it up now, 2021, bummer year. 2022, better year. The end.